Hello, and welcome to the Being Human podcast, where we explore what it means to be human, physically, mentally, and spiritually. We upload an episode of this podcast every single week, so whether you're new here or especially if you're returning and you have not yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss any of these episodes. On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Elise Michaels. Elise Michaels is a men's mental health coach. She works specifically with high-performing men, helping them with their mindset, with their mental health, helping them to maintain and create healthy relationships in their lives. And this conversation was all about that. We exchanged ideas on how high-performing men can maintain good mental health, maintain good relationships in their life while still performing at a high level. A really interesting conversation, lots of different ideas shared and discussed. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below, share it around on social media, and hit that subscribe button too. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to hit that follow button and rate the show 5 stars too. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Being Human. The Being Human podcast is brought to you by Ra Optics. These are the best blue blocker glasses on the market. I use these daylight lenses when I'm doing my work throughout the day to keep me energized, to eliminate eye strain, headaches and mood imbalances. And then I use these sunset lenses in the evening to really help me block out that blue light, wind down and get a good night's rest. Ra Optics are effective and stylish. I wear these to work, I wear these out to dinner. They really are fantastic. There's a whole range of different styles for you to shop to find something that suits you. All you need to do to pick up a set of these is to head to raoptics.com and use the code WAGLELE to get 10% off your order. That's raoptics, ARoptics.com, and use the code WAGLELE, WAGLELE, all caps, to get 10% off your order. The Being Human podcast is brought to you by Mr. Bassett's Grappler's Coffee and Mr. Bassett's Grappler Soap. Mr. Bassett's brings you quality, natural goods that are going to nourish you, not harm you. Grappler Soap is the soap to use if you're a combat sports athlete to fight off those skin infections, keep them at bay, and stay smelling fresh for your training partners. And Grappler's Coffee is the coffee to get you caffeinated so you can continue to wrist lock, punch choke, and oil check your training partners into oblivion. All you need to do to pick up these goods is to head to MrBassett.com and use the code WAG10 to get 10% off your order. That's MrBassett.com, WAG, all caps, 10 to get 10% off your order. And now presenting Being Human with Elise Michaels. From your perspective, in your experience, Elise, how are men doing in the world today?
How are men doing in the world today with their mental health?
Yeah, or in general. Obviously, mental health is a massive part of that. It's all intertwined, so to speak, right? I think if your mental health's good, your life tends to be going well, and vice versa. Your perception is everything.
Right. Well, I think we're kind of like in the mental health apocalypse right now. Started off with hide your feelings, hide your emotions. Now it's kind of had the other end of the pendulum where we're feeling so much that everything is kind of overwhelming and everybody has a label: ADHD, anxiety, depression. So I think we're in the muck of trying to get out of that and back into what is just living life without a mental health label. And I think men are really struggling with that and struggling to identify who they are and what masculinity means to them.
Do you think then the use of the term mental health, do you think it's been overused? Do you think it's almost been to the detriment of men to kind of have had such a light shone on men's mental health? Have we become too focused on it?
I think as a society in general, we've become too focused on mental health, but I think that men's mental health is still a topic that needs light shed on it because they are still the leading statistic in suicide rates. Still 3/4 of suicides are men. So I think they still need to address it. It's still an important and vital part of society, but there can be a time where something becomes too much and it becomes detrimental.
What are the main issues that men are facing when it comes to their mental health? Where is this crisis stemming from?
The crisis stems from when they're young and they're often denied the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to be emotional. You know, big boys don't cry, get over it, rub some dirt on it. And when you deny a very biological necessity, because it's necessary to understand how a situation impacts you, when you deny that, you grow up denying it for others. So a lot of men become adults who really struggle in relationships. They don't know how to perceive social situations, interactions, because they've denied it in themselves. So as relationships are the foundation, baseline of happiness, a lot of men, when they deny their emotions, can't connect on a relational level very deeply. So they struggle with a lot of aspects of life because their relationships are suffering because of this core start of rejecting their emotions. Maybe you could let me know if you resonate with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think obviously, yeah, the way you said it, like big boys don't cry. That's always been a thing with men, a culture with men, and I think it's towing the line and drawing the line, because I think that comes from a good place, a well-meaning place at its inception, in that a good man is a strong man. Men have a lot of responsibility bestowed upon them, obviously, especially when, you become a husband and then become a father. That's the ultimate responsibility. And it's important that you're able to bear it with strength and stoically as well. So it's come from a well-meaning place, but then obviously we've let that draw over or bleed over to a point where men feel as though they can't express their emotions. So it's having that balance. I do think there's something to be said that, men do need to be strong. They need to be stoic. There's a time and a place to acknowledge your emotions and go, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now. I've got to put that to one side in order to continue to act in the way that I need to fulfill my responsibility, but to be aware that that emotion's there, it's there for a reason, and at some point I need to tend to that.
Okay. Why do you feel like men need to be stoic? What does that mean for you?
To be stoic would be to acknowledge that which is in your control, to focus on that and to act on that, and to realize what's not in your control, and then to not become overwhelmed by that, no matter how daunting it may be. I think you need to, as I said, you need to be aware that there are going to be things in life that are going to put you in an emotionally vulnerable state, but there's going to be times when you need to put that to a side in order to fulfill your responsibility, to fulfill your duties as a man. But then, like I said, the piece of the puzzle is realizing that you have put those emotions to a side, and at some point you will need to come back to those and tend to those.
Who taught you your duties as a man? Like, where did you learn that from? Who gave you the manual?
Where did I learn that from?
Yeah.
I'd say as I've grown older, as I've entered into the world as a young man, I think I realised that, the process from being a child to becoming a man, you realise people are going to depend on you, whether that's financially or emotionally. They're going to look to you for support. And as a man, I do believe it's your duty to be strong for those around you. But to be able to support the women in your life, to be able to support your children, obviously you need to financially support your children or they're going to go hungry. As a father, you need to emotionally support your children as well. And I think that's a big issue a lot of men face. When they were young, they maybe didn't have that emotional support, even though they had that financial support. I think that was something, men throughout history or, throughout the modern world, they've always been pretty good at supporting their families financially. Maybe where they didn't provide enough support traditionally was on the emotional side of things.
Okay. So you're saying men need to emotionally support their children. How do you feel about that when it comes to men and their spouses, their wives? Do you think that men need to emotionally support their wives as well?
Yeah, and I think vice versa. A wife needs to support her husband. I think that's an important part of a relationship. At the end of the day, you've got to tend to your emotional state yourself, right? But I think a healthy relationship is being able to help bring the other up when they're down, and vice versa. I think a great element or a very necessary element for a lot of wives is being able to bring down their husband in a healthy way. I think a lot of men, I know I can say this for myself, can oftentimes get too high on themselves, which can obviously be a great thing. It's important to be confident, but not allowing that confidence to stray into arrogance. I think that's an important part of being a good woman to your man, being able to keep him grounded when he keeps wanting to go to the moon.
Okay. And you seem like pretty young, but you seem pretty positive about like women. How are you avoiding the red pill mentality and dynamic that is kind of women are useless, avoid them, they're only good for one thing, stay single kings kind of mentality that I'm seeing sweep the nation?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because you see a lot of young men falling into that, right? I don't know. I for me, like I haven't really had to fight that. I think you've just got to look at the way the world works and acknowledge that we're all human at the end of the day. We all need one another, and there's things that men do well, that men do better than women. There's things that women do better than men. We're strongest when we're together. And I think in this whole diversity and inclusion culture that's come about, there's been a lot of focus on diversity and not a lot of focus on inclusion. We've become very good at noticing the differences, but not looking at how that leads to inclusion, to use that language, how we can use that to unite and bring the best out of one another, which is how it's always traditionally been done from the beginning of time. You know, regardless of gender, regardless of sex, men and women have operated together. It's been necessary, number one, to procreate, to bring humans into the world physically, but then on a sociological level, we've each played to our strengths. Men have gone out, they've hunted to be able to provide, they've protected the tribe. The women have nurtured the children, raised men. Obviously, men have had a hand in that as well. Raised the men and women of future generations, have created a homely environment, a safe and beautiful environment for the men to return from. I don't know. What I say always, I would like to think I've just always had an appreciation for the fact that men don't rule the world, women don't rule the world. We rule it together, so to speak.
Okay. Well, I have two questions following that. Well, the first one is, did you grow up in a home where you saw equally divided roles? Like, it sounds like you grew up in a family where the father was the provider and the mother was the nurturer. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Second, so that kind of answers my second question, because you keep bringing up the responsibilities of the man, and you tack on to there, he's the provider, whether it's financially or whatever it is. And it's just really funny that you say that, because along with that red pill mentality, there's a huge push for 50-50. There's a huge outcry from a lot of men that says, why should I have to provide? Why should I have to take care of her? All women are gold diggers. So I'd just love to hear it from your point of view of, like, you still hold strong to the man being the provider.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that's how it has to be. Is that a universal law? Is that a universal rule? I mean, I think there's definitely an evolutionary aspect to play at that, right? I mean, like, a man going out, earning a wage, that then enables the family to buy food to put on the table, which is akin to taking it back to hunter-gatherer times, the man going out, or the men going out to hunt down the woolly mammoth to bring it back, to put food on the proverbial table. So I guess that's where it comes from. So from a biological standpoint, it's, maybe more of a biological rule, or, it makes more sense traditionally for the men to be the providers. But I think it is going to differ from relationship to relationship. I think, this is the problem, I think, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. When it comes to gender differences, gender equality, we do a good job of either like the red pill people focus on the majority maybe a bit too much, and then we have kind of like the woke agenda focusing on the minority. So the woke agenda is going to say, women, we need more women CEOs. Women have right to be CEOs, and they overblow this so much to the point where they're pushing women who really have no desire to be in a corporate executive role. They'd rather be a homemaker, but they're feeling the pressure from this movement. That they're thinking now, oh, it's not enough for me to, stay at home, nurture my kids, provide a homely environment for the family. I feel like I need to go out and earn a wage too, when really they'd be happy being a stay-at-home mum, being a stay-at-home wife. And then on the other side of things, like you've got the red pill that's saying, they're trying to, each side is trying to swing the pendulum back, when really, like, we want it at rest in the middle, right? And the middle is like, men and women are equal but different. Men are traditionally more masculine. I think part of that is the ambition. The saying I like to use is, men, we want to go to the moon, and women keep us grounded on Earth. I think that's hopefully people don't think of that as sexist. I think that's a beautiful metaphor, in the sense that women do keep men grounded traditionally in a beautiful way. Men, a very masculine man's going to have these ambitions. They want to keep on chasing. They want to keep on hunting and gathering and building and accumulating as much as possible. And a good woman in that scenario will be able to help guide a man to slow down when he's done enough, when he is enough, to not keep on meaninglessly chasing. But my original point there was that men are traditionally more masculine, women are traditionally more feminine. There's obviously going to be a minority who have those inverted. There's going to be some very masculine women, and there's going to be some very feminine men. And it's important that we let them know that that's okay. Like, they're not the majority, but it's perfectly acceptable to be a feminine man. It's perfectly acceptable to be a masculine woman. We need to accept those minorities without constructing society in a way that over caters to them, in a way that treats them as though they're a majority. Does that make sense?
Right. But I think what we're seeing in today is that the majority is becoming inverted, not because voluntarily, but because, like you said, it's being pushed, like the agenda is being pushed. So what advice would you give because there's a lot of men who are in their masculine, there's a lot of women who are also in their masculine and don't want to be, and they want a masculine man, right? And then also women who, they want to go to the moon, but they want a man who wants to go to the sun, right? But usually the masculine men are not attracted to masculine women, because straight dudes don't like other dudes, right? It's just how it goes. What advice would you give to a woman who is kind of being pushed in her masculine, like you said, the corporate role that she doesn't really want? She feels like she has to work it to get the masculine man that she wants. How can she attract that guy when she's giving off this masculine energy?
That's a good question. I suppose from my perspective as a man, I'm attracted to women that are more feminine. Women need to just embrace, in that scenario, a woman needs to embrace her feminine energy. For me, as somebody that's very active, very ambitious, I'm constantly go, go, go. So a woman who has a very calming presence, who's passive, again, some people might take that as a sexist comment. Oh, why should women be passive? I'm not saying women need to be passive, but to me, a woman that's more passive is very attractive, because it's the yin to my yang. It's the counterbalance. I want somebody that's very calm, very peaceful, because on the contrary, I'm naturally not a very calm and peaceful guy. So I think in that scenario, a woman embracing her femininity and showing a very masculine man that she can be the counterbalance that he needs in his life, that's what's going to attract that kind of guy. What about on your end, from a woman's perspective? What would you see as, what do you think women in that scenario need to do?
Well, that's why I'm asking you, right? Because you're the man. Because women really struggle with this, right? Here, I'll give you an example. Like, I give this example all the time. What I used to think, because we all say that whoever you want, you have to become, right? You have to be an equal to attract the person that you want. So I used to think that meant equal is same, not equal is balancing. And that's what they kind of teach you. So I thought, oh, if I want a strong, successful, hardworking man, I have to like be this in the form of a woman. And he's going to want those things in me. So I'm out here accomplishing all these things. Really, it's really funny. It's really funny to me now because I would go on dates and I'd be like, yeah, I do this, this, and this. Like, I'm so cool. Isn't he going to see how awesome I am and so successful, and he's going to fall in love with me because I've achieved all this stuff? And I didn't realize that it wasn't attractive. It felt competitive. I was in no way trying to compete with these people, but it's exactly like you said. It's not meeting the balancing energy, it's meeting the same energy. But men don't need the same energy, they need the opposite. And so the irony, the cruel irony that we've got locked into as a society is that we've pushed women to be so independent and so successful, and they're coming out showcasing the achievements just like men would. But men don't care about women's achievements. They don't actually care about a woman's income. It's really crazy. And like a lot of women will say they're not doing it for men, which is true. But if you want a spouse, everything is a game of sales. So you have to understand the target market and what they're looking for from the product. A man loves a successful woman. He loves an independent woman. He loves an articulate woman, an intelligent woman. But the energy, like you said, has to be what he's looking for. So he doesn't want all those things in a woman who's showing masculine energy. He wants all those things in a woman who's showing feminine energy, who loves to paint, who loves to be free, who's a little bit chaotic, but she has a nurturing quality about her that she's like, if you've had a hard day, I'm not going to make it harder. I'm not going to say my day was harder than your day. I'm not going to like immediately compete with you for who has it worse.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, you put two magnets together at the same pole, north and north, they're going to repel one another. It's, again, in the yang, or however you want to frame it, opposites attract. I think that saying reigns true. Going back to men in vulnerability, a lot of men struggle with being vulnerable. I think with the more attention mental health and men's mental health has got, there's maybe some men that have kind of dwelled in their vulnerability too much. From a woman's perspective, how much emotion is quote unquote acceptable for a man to show? Is there a limit to this, or is it a question of how they show their emotions, what they do off the back of showing their emotions? Where's the nuance in this?
Right, the nuance really depends on who you are and who you're with, because not everybody deserves your vulnerability, and not everybody can handle your vulnerability. So if you're a man who's used to not being vulnerable, you're used to shoving it all under the rug, and you have a partner who met you in this container where you were very hard and you didn't show any emotion, they're not going to react very well to you being vulnerable, because that's not what they came into the container with. You're changing the rules of this dynamic. If you're a man who's been working on his vulnerability for a long time, you understand the concept of boundaries, you understand the concept of access that people can get to you, you are more likely to meet someone who's healthy, who can accept your vulnerability and understand that you expressing emotion doesn't mean that you're relying on them to fix it. Just like when a woman expresses her emotions to a man, she's not relying on him to fix it. And then it's more balanced. But I think what we're missing in this dynamic and concept of vulnerability is people don't understand that there's a level of access that people have to earn from you, just like trust.
What are the main ways that you think people can build trust in a relationship that they perhaps aren't doing?
What are the main ways that they can build trust? I think many people don't understand how to assess properly behavior patterns. They just go for what they think looks good and feels good in the moment without analyzing past relationships, without understanding family dynamics, without asking the hard questions. How would you respond in this situation? What are your future goals? I think a lot of people don't understand how to self-analyze, so they get into these relationships hoping that the other person will fulfill this loneliness, or be a good way to pass the time, instead of just being patient and waiting and being lonely for a set period of time until somebody matches the future compatibility. If you don't vet for compatibility, your trust will eventually dissolve, because that person isn't aligned with your goals or anything anyway. And then we end up blaming the entire opposite sex when the relationship doesn't work out, or it turns out to be toxic, when we really just didn't analyze anything at all.
In general, at the moment, are you, with the men that you work with, on average, would you say you're seeing more men that are really in, go gear, really high performing in terms of their career, their job, and they're struggling to pull it back in order to make the relationship in their life work, in order to make dating work? Or are you seeing more men that are kind of really in a slump? They're depressed, anxious maybe, and they're just struggling to get going, and that's the barrier to them getting into the dating market, finding a relationship which works for them? Is one problem more prevalent than the other at the moment?
My clients are high performers, and I actually don't encourage them to pull back. I encourage them to do more. But both of those are truths, because men who are not active become depressed. And then they start to find little problems that they can blame things on. Lack of accountability is a man's worst enemy. The second he starts to blame other people, blame other things, why he doesn't have enough money, why he's overweight, why women are whatever, he becomes depressed, because he's abandoning his leadership. And the second you pull back on a man and try to hold him back, he will also become depressed. If a man has big goals, you have to let him have big goals. And I would actually argue with you that the perfect partner for that man is not a woman who pulls him back to earth, but who helps him achieve getting to outer space by the environment that she creates, not being chaotic, being supportive, being the nourishment he needs along the way. Because the second she starts pulling him back, he becomes miserable. And she becomes miserable because she loses respect for him. And she's like, this isn't the guy I was with, and I'm losing respect for him because he had big goals and he let me take him off track. I don't respect that guy.
Yeah, no, that certainly resonates. For those men, like we said, that are very ambitious, high performers that want to go to the moon, I think there's a great amount of truth in that. The ideal woman for them is not going to be somebody that pulls them back, but quite the contrary, gives them what they need to have even more fuel to go to the heights that they want to go to. But at the end of the day, there's still a relationship to tend to, and one day, in a lot of cases, there'll be a family to tend to as well. How can men best balance those things? Because I think a lot of the time,
men make that sacrifice. There's no such thing as balance, right? That's probably not the advice you're looking for, but it's like...
I missed that last point.
I said successful men make that sacrifice, and there's no such thing as balance. You can't be a completely, fully present father and go to the moon. You choose one or the other.
Okay, you don't balance that.
I mean, do you have an example of someone who has?
I suppose I can't think of someone off the top of my head. No. I don't know that there's not, though, right? I'm sure there's many high-performing men that have also been present in their children's lives.
You can be, but there's no way to, just like there's no such thing as multitasking. So, there are going to be moments of presence and moments of the moon, but if a man is really, going for the moon, that's his focus. And then maybe after he's achieved a certain level of success, he'll commit to his family. But he can't do both at once.
Okay. So you think it's a case of prioritizing, fulfilling and achieving his ambitions
Yeah, he just has to choose in the moment which is a priority for him, because he can still be high performing. It just won't be to the extreme that it would be if he were fully focused on that. Like, he'll just reprioritize and he'll be like, now is my time of like my highest priority is being a high performing dad. Not that he's going to be a stay at home dad, like he'll still work and stuff, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yes. So I think what you're saying is there'll be a period of time where the priority is fulfilling his ambitions, performing at a high level in whatever his job is, whatever his industry is, achieving whatever his goals are. And then once he's accomplished those, then he'll be able to spend more time with his family. Hopefully that's financially paid off in a way that allows him logistically to spend more time with his family. You think that's the ultimate optimal strategy rather than trying to balance the two as you go?
Yeah, because I think that if he worries himself about balancing, he's just going to go crazy, because he'll never be able to fulfill all of what he wants to if he focuses on balancing, because it'll never be enough. He'll never be home enough for the wife and for the kids, because there'll always be some event that he can't make it to, or birthday or whatever. And then work will, like, so if he focuses on trying to balance everything, he's just going to lose it, because there's no time, there's no mental space enough for everything. So one has to take a little bit of priority over the other. And if he's in his career and he's like, I need to find balance, it just means that, okay, we just need to reprioritize what you want to focus on at this season of your life, because maybe you're unsatisfied, or maybe you're stressing about finding balance because everybody tells you that you need to, and that's what's causing you all this chaos, instead of just understanding that this life is working for you, your kids are happy, your family's happy, nobody's complaining, you're not at the edge of divorce. Okay, so keep doing what you're doing. But if you are at the edge of divorce, your kids don't even know who you are, you might need to reprioritize, right? Because at the end of the day, then you're going to be miserable.
That's what I mean. I think, yeah, it's obviously going to be unique to each individual situation. Obviously, I don't have a family, I don't have children, so for me, it's easy. I've got my focuses, I've got my goals, and I don't have to think about that side of things. I mean, the thought of it must be a very difficult situation for men to balance. But as you said, like if they keep on going to the neglect of their family, to the neglect of being a present father, there's going to be a point where they've got to look at their life, right, and go, okay, like my family really needs more of me. Maybe these goals and ambitions I've got to put on the shelf. Maybe I can resume them at another time, or in some cases, maybe I've got to let go of those because there's other priorities, greater priorities that are needed of me. And I think that goes back to, I mean, in my mind, the greatest achievement a man can achieve is being a great husband for his wife and being a great father for his children. As much as, you know, I'm a young man without a wife and children that has these grandiose goals, in my mind, I'm still aware that I don't think I'll ever find anything in life that's more fulfilling than raising and caring for a family I've created. How do men know when they've done enough, when they are enough? I think that must be something that a lot of men you coach deal with, right? They're ambitious, they want to go to the moon, as we keep saying, and that can turn into, rather than summiting a mountain, it can turn into a hamster wheel, right? They achieve one thing and it's on to the next, it's on to the next, it's on to the next. That's very addictive. How can men stay aware of if they're enough, when they are enough? How do they get off that wheel?
Right. I think a lot of men start off their goals by chasing actually the validation of their self-worth, because they don't feel like they're good enough. So they're like, okay, well, in order to be a man, I have to get this amount of money, or look this way, or achieve this level of success. And when I get there, then I'll be a man, then I'll be worthy. They don't say this consciously, but it's a subconscious, bid for approval from society, from their parents, from their girlfriend, whatever. When a man has to chase success, and he has to kind of get to that point to reach a level of consciousness where he goes, maybe I shouldn't seek external fulfillment for my validation, because it's not enough. So it's not when does it become enough, it's that you realize it was never going to be enough. And when you realize it was never going to be enough, then you start searching for other means of fulfillment. Like you said, you've already come to the conclusion that there's going to be no greater fulfillment than raising a family. You have your own conclusions for why you've chosen that. And every man, if he's lucky enough, will come to this point where he says, my greatest fulfillment is going to be something that I've created internally. Not that I'm accumulating on the outside, because that will never be enough. You could accumulate endless amounts of things on the outside, you'll never be able to take them with you. So it's almost like a self-perception and an acceptance that, like, my version of what's good enough is simply what I can conquer in this life, how present I can be in this life, how purposeful I make every day of this life, and how much life I put into this life. And the accumulations will keep on coming, but all they are is just little validations. They're not something that you need to keep having in order to feel fulfilled anymore.
What are the best ways, in a practical sense, that women can support the men in their lives to help them be the best that they can be?
I think for women, it's really helpful to men. Well, I mean, it just depends. Are you speaking in general, or are you speaking in terms of partnership?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if a woman doesn't have a boyfriend, are you asking how she can still support men?
Or in the context of a relationship?
I think it's important first of all, for women to maintain themselves in their own hobbies, their own activities, their own joys in life. Because I think what a lot of women do in relationships is, in a bid to love their partner, they can also do too much. And it smothers him and mothers him, and then she becomes resentful. And that's why a lot of women have glow-ups when they break up, because they stop taking care of themselves. So for a woman to maintain a sense of herself, like, this goes so against everything in, like, the societal narrative right now, but women, they are the prize. Men are the winners, and women are the prize, right? So prizes are beautiful. Prizes are, like, you have to maintain yourself. You have to have this air of, like, you have won me, keep being, like, by a woman just taking care of herself and maintaining her prize status, that he's lucky to have her, motivates him to keep being a winner. Like, men need a muse. So it's really kind of, it sounds backwards, but it's less about, like, focusing all on him and more about continuing to make sure that you stay with the same energy you came with, right? Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because what he chose you for and with is ultimately what he wants to keep. It's what motivated him in the beginning. It's what seduced him in the beginning. So I think it's very important for women to maintain whatever they're doing at the same time that started the relationship. And then obviously to create a safe space so that when you have accessed a level of trust and vulnerability, that he can open up to you and you can be his number one, his confidant. Not that you have to be his therapist that he just dumps everything out on, or his mother, but you should look forward to him calling you as the one perspective that he respects and appreciates, as the one person that he can confide in, as the one person he can trust. You're not spilling his secrets to all your girlfriends. You're not talking about your relationship to all your girlfriends or to everybody outside and embarrassing him. Like, you need to be his number one fan, because a woman is a representation of her man in public. So supporting him is taking care of yourself, and it's also protecting the bounds of the relationship by being the confidant.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of truth in that, in the sense that I think the main focus for a woman attracting the kind of man that she wants to is more focused inward in her maintaining her femininity, growing into her femininity. It's more about her becoming who she is. Whereas a man, it is about who you are as well. It is internal, but I think there is more of an external component in the sense that it does hinge more on what you do. A man who wants to attract a certain kind of woman, he needs to focus on doing certain things, accomplishing certain things. It's not just about earning X amount of money. Maybe it is about certain men if they want a certain kind of woman. But it's about accomplishing certain things. I think with men, there is more of a focus on what you do, and with women, it's more of a focus on who you are. That's not quite black and white, but would you agree with that characterization?
I would agree that those are like the foundations of balancing, of the attractiveness. And I think men tend to look at that as a negative, like, why should I be successful? Why should I earn the money? It's so much pressure. And I think you should see it as something good. It's good to be challenged in life. It's good to want to do all that you can do and have your purpose. And like, why wouldn't you want to be successful? Women don't care about the status that you have. They don't care about how much money you have beyond, like, can you take care of a family? Like, it's good to assess that in a man's capabilities. Like, can you take care of a family, or are you going to make your 9-month pregnant wife scan things at Trader Joe's? You know, like, can you imagine? Like, if you're a man who wants his wife to do that, that's crazy. You need to rethink things, I think. A pregnant woman, like, having to go to work every day, I think is absurd. Maybe that's why I don't have kids. You know, I don't know, because I'm not going to put myself in that situation, right? But women do care. They care about who a man is in the way that, is he trying to achieve something? Does he have drive? Does he have compassion? Does he show in his character that he is willing to do what it takes to take care of us? Women will do anything for that man. They will do anything for the man that shows them that. Because women, at the end of the day, just want to be taken care of. They want to be loved. They want to be cherished. They want to be chosen. That's the thing with women, is like, they want to be chosen. They want to be special. So men who are going after things have a certain hierarchy for women, because that drive and that motivation is attractive. But it doesn't necessarily matter what it is.
Yeah, would you say it doesn't matter so much as what a man does, but the way he does it? Because not every man is or wants to earn 6 figures, 7 figures, wants to be a CEO. Some men, they want to learn a trade, work a trade, earn a quote-unquote honest living, work a more quote-unquote blue-collar job, and they're not going to be a millionaire, but they're going to provide a stable living for their family. So, yeah, in my mind, it doesn't really matter what a man does, but it's more about how he does it. He does it with pride, does it with integrity, works hard, earns an honest living, and cares for his family. Would you agree with that? Yeah,
exactly. And it's, like you said, like the blue-collar jobs, that's really hot for a lot of women, because they're like, dude, my sink breaks. He can take care, like, she's going to be taken care of. Hole in the roof? I don't need to call the neighbor John. My husband Derek's going to take care of it. You know what I mean? Like, when a woman can say, like, I can rely on my man, because there's also a lot of men who make a lot of money and they don't know how to fix a damn thing. Like, they don't know how to change a tire, and they're sitting there with their manicured nails. It's not bad to get manicures, man. You should take care of yourself. But you know what I'm saying? You're just like, I don't know how to do this. And you're like, and maybe she does. And, you know, it's just like, you have to have a balance. It's the energy. Like you said, it's the energy.
Yeah, and I guess that goes to show that there's nuances within masculinity and femininity. There's different kinds of femininity within a woman, there's different kinds of masculinity within a man. There may be a very masculine man that has manicures every week, but he's an absolute killer in the corporate world, and is a conqueror in that endeavour. And there may be a man who earns very little. His family are struggling, but he is, full of piss and vinegar, as we say in the UK. He can get his hands dirty. He can fix the kitchen sink. They're two very different kinds of masculine men, but both masculine men. And I suppose the same applies for women, right, in terms of their femininity. Right.
And I think it's just whatever kind of man you are, as long as you own that, that's what's going to determine your masculinity. Like, that because you're like, hey, listen, this is who I am. It's kind of like, you know, a lot of people talk about height, but there are some short men, the confidence is way overriding tall men, and they just bag some baddies. You know what I mean? Like, they bag the baddies because they don't care. They're like, listen, I can't control this, so I'm going to do what I can do with what I got. And that's a man, right?
Yeah. I guess whether a man does that well or not is the difference between the short guy that's incredibly confident and charismatic and the small man with little man syndrome.
Yeah. Well, one has confidence truly, and one has like an ego.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about that. How does a man cultivate his ego in a healthy way?
Well, I guess in order to have a healthy ego, you have to kill it. The I am, because like if you're just boosting your ego, it's just a sign of low self-esteem. People with good self-esteems don't care about what other people think about them. They just enjoy life, and they enjoy life on their standards. The ego says, I can enjoy life when everybody loves me, everybody accepts me, and if they don't accept me, I will change myself to be accepted by them, or I will aggressively hold my stance and be on the offensive or the defense all the time for wherever I'm at to make sure that I still feel like I'm okay. Like, kind of like the woke agenda. Like, you need to accept me for who I am. Like, it's all ego based, because nobody cares who you are. Truly, nobody cares about the labels, but you feel so inadequate that you feel others must. Right. And you make a whole identity about that.
It's about doing things for your own internal validation that build your self-esteem internally rather than seeking validation externally in what you do to build your self-esteem from an external point of view.
Right.
We talked about what women can do to help support men. What can men do to help support themselves? What's the best ways they can take care of themselves?
Oh, this is great. They find a strong masculine mentor who you would want to emulate, like what they're doing. So a lot of men have male mentors that they don't respect, but they just grew up with, or they have an absence of male mentorship. And it's very important for men to have other men to look up to and to be friends with. So get a good men's group, whether it's online, in person. There's a lot of them now, so I think that's very important. I think it's also important for men to have a spiritual connection as well, because like in Christianity, you have God, and God is the symbolism of perfection. Now, human men, they're always going to be disappointing. They're always going to be flawed. They're always going to make mistakes. Men need something to look up to. So what better to look up to than the symbolism of perfection, as a heavenly father, as a guide. Find something you can connect to spiritually that's going to make you think beyond your own desires, beyond your own temptations. And if you can have a good core compass of that, you can start to set core values, start to think about your character, and start to think about long term. A lot of men and people are addicted to short-term gratification, indoctrined by society. Start thinking long term, and your life will really pay off.
That reminds me of something Matthew McConaughey said when he was accepting an Academy Award, I think it was. He said he needs three things in life. I can't remember what the first two were, but the third one was he needs something to look forward to, as in not to anticipate, but a North Star, so to speak. And obviously he's a godly man, a Christian, but in that context, he said the thing he's looking forward to, the person he's looking forward to, is the man he will be in 5 years' time. And the great thing about that is it keeps resetting, because the man, in 5 years' time, it will be the man that he is right now in 10 years' time. And that gives him a North Star to look towards, the ideal. So, I mean, I'm a very spiritual man myself. I know what I call God, and I connect with that and look towards God as my North Star. But for anybody that doesn't feel a spiritual connection in that sense, or isn't religious in the traditional sense, I think that can be a great frame. Think of the ideal man, whether you can look at that ideal man from a mentor that you have, or whether it's just a mere figment of your imagination of who you can be in a few years' time. I think that's a really powerful mind frame for a lot of men to keep. Who do I want to be in 5 years' time? And obviously, you need to do a lot of inner work to make sure that the idol that you're holding in your mind is a healthy one, as we talked about with the ego and everything on that side of things. But yeah, if you can hold a healthy ideal in your mind, I think that's really powerful. What about the men that are struggling with their emotionality, struggling with vulnerability? Do you have any quote unquote techniques? What's your guidance for men that are maybe being too strong, too stoic, and need to open up more? How can they do that?
Hire a professional to talk to, because the one mistake that these men make is they try to open up to someone they love or someone around them, and that person's usually not equipped. So then they get rejected, and then they're like, well, I tried that one time and it didn't work, and I've just decided never open up again. So don't traumatize yourself by opening up to the people you know. Hire someone first who understands how to hold space for you and teach you how to understand boundaries and how to assess things within yourself. And it'll be the best decision that you make, right? You have no fear of judgment. You have no fear of being rejected. You can just analyze this new part of yourself very freely.
Would you say in an ideal world, the people that they know, the people that do care about them, in an ideal world, they will know how to hold that space for them, they will know how to deal with that? But is unfortunately that not the reality that most men that you work with face?
I think that's a reality that most people in the world in general face. We grew up in a very emotionally neglected era. I think now is the generation that's growing up with emotionally aware parents, right? Millennial parents are aware how to handle their emotions, how to hold space. Gen Z will be aware, probably too much. But before that, like the boomer generation, what were emotions when you're looking for bread? Or emotions when you're fighting a world war? Those things don't matter as much when you're just surviving. Now that we're beyond just surviving, we'll be more capable of it. But even so, do your friends and family deserve to have that access to you? Still may be a thing continuing in time that it will always be a good resource to have a third party that doesn't know you or your family.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for the objective perspective, so to speak. The person that's able to see into the bubble from an emotionally detached perspective. I do think that is important. But I think, unfortunately, it may not be the reality for a lot of people. But I think if you do have people in your life that know you and care about you, that are able to be there for you emotionally, that you are able to open up to, I think that's the ideal, and that's a great and beautiful thing. But unfortunately, a lot of people do not have access to that.
Well, and sometimes it might surprise you. Like I've challenged my men. They're like, oh, my friends aren't like that. But I have so many men who say that to me. I'm like, well, it would be impossible for like every man to say their friends aren't like that, but every man is saying my friends aren't like that. So many men are actually desiring deeper, closer connections, and they're just hiding it from you as well. So I would even challenge someone, if they are really close with someone and they just haven't spoken about deep concepts, to try it out and see how that man responds, because he's probably been looking for someone to open up to as well.
Yeah. I think, obviously, I think I'm Gen Z. I'm 26 years old. I was born in 98, so I think I'm Gen Z. And speaking from my,
I think you're still part of millennial. I think it goes till 99.
Right. Also, Gen Z's from 99 onwards.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but
I'm like Gen Z.
Because I thought I was Gen Z too, but I'm millennial.
Like probably a mixture of the both. But anyway, talking from a man that's around my age. Maybe it's just the friends that I have. Maybe I'm just lucky. Maybe it's the environments that I'm in, the people I associate with. But all of my friends are incredibly emotionally aware, bar maybe a couple that are kind of like, more traditionally, lace up your boots and get on with it. But yeah, I think our generation's very, as men, we're open with our emotions in a very healthy way. Well, that's my experience, at least. Maybe I'm obviously coming from a biased perspective. Maybe my perspective isn't representative of the whole. Do you think you kind of touched, I suppose, on the reasoning why people are more emotionally aware or more emotionally vulnerable? Do you think it's just a matter of fact life has gotten easier, so the need to kind of bottle everything in to be strong, that necessity isn't there anymore because we haven't had to go off? This generation hasn't had to go off and fight a war. We haven't had that prospect looming over us. Life isn't as hard, it's a lot more comfortable. So we haven't had to repress and suppress our emotional needs, and we've been in an environment where we have been able to let them let them flow more freely.
Well, I think that depends on the environment that you grow up in. There's nature versus nurture. A lot of people would say, oh, this isn't an easy time to grow up in. But when you're in a war versus like growing up now, it is much easier. And that's why we have all of these people who are choosing these small battles to bring up and fight that like don't actually mean anything. Like, and I can only speak from growing up in the United States. We have this huge push for LGBTQ and equality, and pushing just a lot of little things that don't actually matter. If we were in a survival state, people don't understand how privileged it is to want to change your gender because you become so bored that you, and this, that might get a lot of hate from a lot of people. But when you have so much freedom that you can sit down one day and think, I might not be the gender I was born with. Let me go into a whole entire, let me make that my life's mission to change my gender. It's like, you don't, that's your biggest problem. You're not when you're looking for food, when you're fighting for your life, you don't have the luxury of thinking about things like that. So yeah, I think that's part of it. It also just depends on the environment that you grow up in. If you grow up in a healthy environment, it sounds like you grew up in a pretty healthy, balanced environment. You have just a subconscious understanding of emotional awareness, and a lot of people don't have that. So it just depends.
Yeah, I think it's almost a case of choose your hard, isn't it? I think having to survive, having to deal with the baseline needs of if I don't, starving is like a real possibility. Dying in conflict's a real possibility. These problems that require us to take care of our survival in a literal sense, that's a tough environment, but at the same time we get all the fulfillment and purpose from simply surviving that. However, then when we're in an environment where our survival is kind of taken for granted, that's secured, we then have to find our own fulfillment, our own purpose off of the back of that. So in one sense, yeah, life is way easier than it was 100 years ago because you're not going to starve. You don't have to go off and fight a war in a muddy trench in France. But you've got the danger of wasting your entire day scrolling through TikTok, having your dopamine system attacked in a way that it was never going to be 100 years ago. You could eat yourself into oblivion, eating 5,000 grams of sugar in one day. It's different challenges. And you can say, oh, one's harder than the other. Each comes with its own challenges. So I think it's important to acknowledge the times that we're in, and to quote unquote combat, to arm ourselves against those, to be aware of the situation we're in, and to I think purpose and fulfillment are two massive things that I focus on. No matter what your situation in life is, you have to have purpose and fulfillment in what you do every day. Your environment, your situation in life may mean that your purpose and your purpose, your meaning in life is baked in, it's clear, and it's necessitated. But if you're in a more comfortable position, it's on you to find that purpose, that fulfillment from within in what you decide to take on in your day-to-day endeavours. As a finishing note, Elise, what would be the best piece of guidance you can give for high-performing men in the world today?
I would really encourage them to develop a spiritual relationship, because when you become so high-performing and successful, you start to understand that society has different rules for you. And it can become very difficult to keep a moral compass, which can become very self-sabotaging and very destructive. So stay the course, continue to be high-performing, but make sure you have a strong compass that keeps you aligned with what's right in your soul, so that when the world offers you things that get you in trouble, you have the ability to avoid those temptations.
Amen to that. I agree with that, absolutely. Elise, thank you for everything you have shared. For the high-performing men that's listening, where can they go to gain more guidance from you?
Everything at EliseMichaels.com on all the social medias. I'm here.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Elise.
Thank you, Arun.